All right. So good to have all of you here so we can start the manual for teachers together. Yay. All right. Let's go ahead and start reading the introduction. The role of teaching and learning is actually reversed in the thinking of the world. The reversal is characteristic. It seems as if the teacher and the learner are separated. The teacher giving something to the learner rather than to himself. Further, the act of teaching is regarded as a special activity in which one engages only a relatively small proportion of one's time. The course, on the other hand, emphasizes that to teach is to learn, so that teacher and learner are the same. It also emphasizes that teaching is a constant process. It goes on every moment of the day and continues into sleeping thoughts as well. To teach is to demonstrate. There are only two thought systems, and you demonstrate that you believe one or the other is true all the time. From your demonstration, others learn, and so do you. The question is not whether you will teach, for in that there is no choice. The purpose of the course might be said to provide you with a means of choosing what you want to teach on the basis of what you want to learn. You cannot give to someone else, but only to yourself. And this you learn through teaching. Teaching is but a call to witnesses to attest to what you believe. It is a method of conversion. This is not done by words alone. Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are and what they are to you. No more than that, but also never less. The curriculum you set up is therefore determined exclusively by what you think you are and what you believe the relationship of others is to you. In the formal teaching situation, these questions may be totally unrelated to what you think you are teaching. Yet it is impossible not to use the content of any situation on behalf of what you really teach, and therefore really learn. To this, the verbal content of your teaching is quite irrelevant. It may coincide with it, or it may not. It is the teaching underlying what you say that teaches you. Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. This does not mean that the self you are trying to protect is real, but it does mean that the self you think is real is what you teach. This is inevitable. There's no escape from it. How could it be otherwise? Everyone who follows the world's curriculum, and everyone here does follow it until he changes his mind, teaches solely to convince himself that he is what he is not. Herein is the purpose of the world. What else, then, would its curriculum be? Into this hopeless and closed learning situation, which teaches nothing but despair and death, God sends his teachers. And as they teach his lessons of joy and hope, their learning finally becomes complete. Except for God's teachers, there would be little hope of salvation, for the world of sin would seem real forever. The self-deceiving must deceive, for they must teach deception. And what else is hell? This is a manual for the teachers of God. They are not perfect, or they would not be here. Yet it is their mission to become perfect here. And so they teach perfection over and over in many, many ways until they have learned it. And then they are seen no more, although their thoughts remain a source of strength and truth forever. Who are they? How are they chosen? What do they do? How can they work out their own salvation and the salvation of the world? This manual attempts to answer these questions. Every time I read this, I see something new. I just love that.
Do you see that the idea of suffering because of loss of individuals in our lives is almost immortal in our minds, compared to the fact that in the course here, what he's talking about is that you need to see these heroes, you need to see these loved ones that have attained this inner peacefulness. That's what you really need to see. But we live in a sense, people that are hurt greatly in war situations, for example, come home and their buddies are in their minds, and their buddies that died are immortalized in their minds. They wish they had died. They would wish that they would suffer to have died instead of suffer to have lost their legs and their arms and parts of their bodies and their mobility and all that sort of thing. And the trauma, like we were talking about a little while ago before class started today, happens that same way. It like immortalizes itself in your human mind. You can't seem to escape from it because you keep on allowing it to interfere with your thought. You keep on allowing it to take over control of your unconscious. You keep on going along, not realizing that these are all distorted miracle impulses, that you can see through them if you want to. So the Course is here. Jesus is telling us, we need to look at these models of calm and peace and joy. We need to see them in our mind instead of see only the harm. We just gradually wake up from the fact that there's no such thing as harm outside of ourselves.
And what I got out of this, Eric, was that we just keep teaching perfection until we learn it. So in other words, as teachers of God, we go to that place of trying to understand and learn and heal those wounded parts of our personalities and continue to teach others how to do that. But what we're really doing is teaching ourselves over and over and over again until we've reached that state of perfection, until we no longer have to learn it, and therefore we are no longer in this world. That's what I got out of the reading.
Like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Which is, but I understand what you're saying, Eric, about the perception of others who've been hurt. And I think that's something that we get pulled into a lot, which is why, I was talking to Freddie, which is why I feel like I have to continue doing this coursework, because it helps me get to that place of being able to teach and see it in the world, so that I can teach and see it to myself, until I finally can get to that place of, okay, now I understand what this is. And that's the end game, right? That's the end goal, is not to see it out there and heal it out there, but more so to teach it because you see it, but you're really reinforcing it within yourself. As you're teaching it, you're teaching about who you are. You're teaching the world, which is part of the projection of the illusion, right? Because it's really just you. It's just the God mind in you projecting itself out into the world. And so once you can finally heal that within yourself, then the world is healed, because there's only one mind of God. It's almost like, I was thinking about this last time we were reading the end of the text. It's almost like there's a virus, right? Like there's a virus that spread, and it spread, and this virus is affecting everything and everyone that we see. But if you get to that beginning point and you can heal that separation, which is the virus, if you can heal that separation within yourself, then the virus is gone. It's like the virus is automatically healed, but you have to heal it within yourself and be of that place of one mind, which I think is what Freddie was saying, that book that Byron Katie was all about. Getting to that place of really, truly understanding today's lesson that God's mind is in me, and therefore that's all I see. That's all I could possibly be. And getting to that place of understanding that, which is, again, a process of like teaching it over and over and over and over again until you finally heal that one little bit of separation, which the Course says is just a tiny gap. It's just that, it's just a tiny gap, just a tiny bit of separation just needs to be healed, and everything's healed.
Mhm. Yes, I was speaking about that. And in lesson 169, for example, the whole idea is the being able to clarify this by revelation, not by my mind. So my mind needs to join with the spirit in this revelation awareness now. So the peacefulness of real miracles comes through me instead of this idea about the harm and frustrations and the confusion and difficulties and so on and so forth that seems to appear to me internally. Because they seem to appear to me internally, they interfere and identify with them as though they're part of my mind, which they're not. So that's why I make them part of my mind, even though they are really not. That's what I'm trying to explain. Is people get traumatized during the course of their lives by these losses that they would have, whether it's of somebody else in their lives, their parents, their siblings, their lovers, or whatever, or whether it's by the fact that they grew up in a childhood which was complicated and confusing. The mind is easily confused when it takes on the identity of the victim, because then it appears the victimizer internally as well. And the victimizer is nonstop. It does not let up whatsoever at all. It has to be a conscious choice to let up, such as is explained up to 169, but 169 is the one that says, here's the revelation fact of life is you need to see the healing given to you. You don't make it yourself. You can't get it unless you're there with the revelation, unless you're there with the healing, unless you're there with the miracle, which comes through you then. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Good to have Tim with us today, and Carol joined while we were reading, just started the manual for teachers, the introduction. So now we're going to go on to who are God's teachers. So if there's no more discussion, I'll go ahead and share my screen and continue. Who are God's teachers? A teacher of God is anyone who chooses to be one. His qualifications consist solely in this: somehow, somewhere, he has made a deliberate choice in which he did not see his interests as apart from someone else's. Once he's done that, his road is established and his direction is sure. A light has entered the darkness. It may be a single light, but that is enough. He has entered an agreement with God, even if he does not yet believe in him. He has become a bringer of salvation. He has become a teacher of God. They come from all over the world. They come from all religions and from no religion. They're the ones who have answered. The call is universal. It goes on all the time, everywhere. It calls for teachers to speak for it and redeem the world. Many hear it, but few will answer. Yet it is all a matter of time. Everyone will answer in the end, but the end can be a long, long way off. It is because of this that the plan of the teachers was established. Their function is to save time. Each one begins as a single light, but with the call at its center, it is a light that cannot be limited. And each one saves 1,000 years of time as the world judges it. To the call itself, time has no meaning. There is a course for every teacher of God. The form of the course varies greatly. So do the particular teaching aids involved. But the content of the course never changes. Its central theme is always, God's Son is guiltless, and in his innocence is his salvation. It can be taught by actions or thoughts, in words or soundlessly, in any language or in no language, in any place or time or manner. It does not matter who the teacher was before he heard the call. He has become a savior by his answering. He has seen someone else as himself. He has therefore found his own salvation and the salvation of the world. In his rebirth is the world reborn. This is a manual for a special curriculum intended for teachers of a special form of the universal course. There are many thousands of other forms, all with the same outcome. They merely save time. Yet it is time alone that winds on wearily, and the world is very tired now. It is old and worn and without hope. There was never a question of outcome, for what can change the will of God? But time, with its illusions of change and death, wears out the world and all things in it. Yet time has an ending, and it is this that the teachers of God are appointed to bring about. For time is in their hands. Such was their choice, and it is given them. That's interesting, isn't it? Time is in our hands by our choice. So what are we doing with it?
There's quite an emphasis on the call with the capital C.
Yes, I saw that.
Freddie, you're back.
Hi there, Tim.
Hey. It's amazing. I was just bringing up that statement this morning. It was either to me, myself, or I. I'm not sure which of the three. But you know, I don't know. It just popped in. It's like you know, procrastination. It's just kind of sad to, you know, invest in the world, which you're not going to get anything back. You appear to, and through spirit, I get everything. It validates always, as long as I'm sincere and I put out you know, that sincere effort. There can't be any halfway. That, I guess the words would be Holy Spirit does not work that way. I mean, he'll take whatever you give him, but you got to have a reasonable amount of sincerity. So anyway, enough.
Any other thoughts about what we just read? Thought it was interesting.
I think what Tim was just sharing is it's a great call if you can really mean that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and it goes back to you just, sometimes you just stop yourself and say, what have I been doing with my time lately? Have I been, you know, have I been focused on healing the separation in my mind, or have I just been pulled into this ego drama?
Mm.
I think
like-
one of the main, I'm sorry, go ahead, Freddie.
Okay.
Finish up what you're doing, guys.
I like the way it's described sometimes that my perception's in my mind. So the whole world is in my mind. And so there isn't really any separation, because all I'm looking at is is my interpretation of my world. And that does break down the idea of separation, which is the main problem, of course, isn't it? And there were some indications that you've got to get away from the separation here. And it was wonderful the way, as soon as you see somebody's interests are not separate from your own. But I kind of had a question mark there, so I can easily see that in some people, but not in everybody. But that it doesn't work that way. As soon as you leave people out, you're back into separation. So if I can see those people in my mind, and what I think of them is part of my mind, I'm just looking at a reflection of myself again. So I can heal the separation that way, because in a way I'm looking at myself, because it's my interpretation of them. Because there's no doubt about it that separation is the problem which has to be overcome.
In every way, you're looking at yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my qualification on all that seems to be that I'm only going to see illusions outside of myself. We talked about the earlier part when we were talking about this inner self. When I'm focused on my identification and my past and my history and those relationships that I have and immortalizing difficulties in my mind, now I'm taken over by the identification of myself as an outside being, as an outside entity, as an outside untruth, as the Course teaches it that way, that it's an untruth. So one illusion leads to another illusion, leads to another illusion, leads to another illusion. There's no stopping it then, other than to stop. Like, I'm a Course in Miracles person, but I'm also I'm a 12-step person. Step 10 says no, stop. So is the Course. It says in Lesson 155, just stop, stand back, let the light lead the way, let him lead the way. So the process is very simple, but I have to do my part to stand back, to stop. In the 10th step, it said to us, very eloquently, I could explain this to people, and they love that, but actually it was just academic. It didn't mean as much to me as I realized later when I saw, in fact, that I let it go. When we're upset, frustrated, bitter, resentful, confused, when there's any kind of contradiction in our mind whatsoever at all, then we have to stop. We have to restrain ourselves to look at that in self-reflection to see, what am I really doing? I'm bringing in the past. I'm bringing in my upsets. I'm bringing in my frustrations. I'm bringing in my disappointments. I'm bringing in all my confusion. And I'm the one causing the contradiction. I have to just stop. Just stop. Just like Bob Newhart says, stop it.
Good. I like it.
That's true.
Um,
Okay.
Something that really appeals to my understanding is that if I'm identifying with the problems, with the life situations and the stress, I'm making it real. Whereas the Course would teach me that not to identify with the self I made, because it also says that the self I made is not the Son of God. So all the while I'm identified as Freddie, the body in the world, I'm not identified with my true self. It's the awareness. It's the spiritual awareness that I have, which is the true self, which is not identified with the body. And it doesn't make the body real. It just simply watches what's happening without judging it. And that non-judgmental awareness allows for the Holy Spirit to be in its place. And it's not my job to know how to heal what I see, but to forgive what I see without judgment. That allows the Holy Spirit to do its part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl talked about hope and the bridge of hope. And this Course in Miracles talks about the bridge also. It doesn't call it hope, but it is the bridge of hope. And it's in his logotherapy that he discovered the fact of that when he was with all the prisoners and they were treated as badly as they were, and when the prisoners that were in charge of supervision of various different activities were beating them and yelling at them and screaming at them and treating them like they were, something horrible, then he started to see the real use of his therapy. He brought into his mind his wife. He brought into his mind the things he loved. He brought into his mind the idea of kindness to the other prisoners, whether they were beating him and yelling at him or whatever, they were suffering in some way. And he saw that he had to replace his suffering with hope. And this is something that's part of our adaptation here. We have to learn hope first because we have no clue what the Course in Miracles is going to say, but all the rest of it when we start to look at it. We start to look at the Course in Miracles, and I didn't understand what accepting the atonement for myself was for the first couple of years, I think. At least a couple of years. Even more than that, I can't remember exactly. But when it really dawned on me, then I really saw the nature of this stop thing. I really saw the nature of what he was talking about I need to see hope. There has to be a bridge to courage. And there's no bridge to courage when I'm using my self-will to keep under the shame and the blame and the confusion and the contradictions in my mind. Because I'm identifying with them, then I'm not releasing myself. Because I can't release myself by myself, I must be with Spirit. Spirit will do for me what I cannot do for myself, but only with me.
I like what you're talking about when you said he brought the image of his wife and things that he loved into his mind, because again, going back to today's lesson, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. And bringing those images of love and God and things that, brought him that sense of at-one-ment, that really is the whole point, right? And once we do that, once we can bring that at-one-ment into our minds, it goes back to what we read in the introduction, is that, it's our mission to become perfect here, which I think in terms mean to become at one, right? And so to teach perfection over and over in many ways until they have learned it. So we teach at-one-ment over and over and over in so many ways until we have learned it, and then we're seen no more. It's we keep thinking it's a projection of what's happening out there, and it has nothing to do with what's happening out there, because that's still a projection of our mind.
Right. Yeah.
The victim needs a rescuer, but the victim has no idea how to escape the victimizer in his mind. So the same victimizer is having a fantasy about being rescued and not seeing, in fact, how that, in fact, they can join in spirit or join in hope, at least anyway, to see their way through this victim story. So I don't have a rescuer. I have the Holy Spirit in my heart. God put the Holy Spirit in my heart. I can't escape it, but I have to recognize it. And that's the problem, is when I'm suffering from trauma and I'm allowing myself to victimize myself by believing that I'm unfairly treated and I'm confused and I'm upset and I don't like what you just did or whatever, then I'm not living in the real world. I'm living in the fantasy that somebody's going to rescue me from all this bullshit. And I'm very judgmental about it too. And I can still sort of go that way. We can still sort of go, we could go that way anytime. That's why that stopping thing is so important too.
Yeah, sure.
Good.
All right. So shall we continue? On to who are their pupils. Certain pupils have been assigned to each of God's teachers, and they will begin to look for him as soon as he has answered the call. They were chosen for him because the form of the universal curriculum that he will teach is best for them in view of their level of understanding. His pupils have been waiting for him, for his coming is certain. Again, it is only a matter of time. Once he is chosen to fulfill his role, they are ready to fulfill theirs. Time waits on his choice, but not on whom he will serve. When he is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for him. In order to understand the teaching learning plan of salvation, it is necessary to grasp the concept of time that the course sets forth. At one mint corrects illusions, not truth. Therefore, it corrects what never was. Further, the plan for this correction was established and completed simultaneously.
Hmm.
For the will of God is entirely apart from time. So is all reality, being of him. The instant the idea of separation entered the mind of God's Son, in that same instant was God's answer given. In time, this happened very long ago. In reality, it never happened at all. The world of time is the world of illusion. What happened long ago seems to be happening now. Choices made long since appear to be open, yet to be made. What has been learned and understood and long ago passed by is looked upon as a new thought, a fresh idea, a different approach. Because your will is free, you can accept what has already happened at any time you choose. And only then will you realize that it was always there. As the course emphasizes, you're not free to choose the curriculum or even the form in which you will learn it. You are free, however, to decide when you want to learn it. And as you accept it, it is already learned. Time really then goes backward to an instant so ancient that it is beyond all memory and past even the possibility of remembering. Yet because it is an instant that is relived again and again and still again, it seems to be right now. And thus it is that pupil and teacher seem to come together in the present, finding each other as if they had not met before. The pupil comes at the right time to the right place. This is inevitable because he made the right choice in that ancient instant, which he now relives. So has the teacher, too, made an inevitable choice out of an ancient past. God's will in everything, but seems to take time in the working out. What could delay the power of eternity? When pupil and teacher come together, a teaching learning situation begins, for the teacher is not really the one who does the teaching. God's teacher speaks to any two who join together for learning purposes. The relationship is holy because of that purpose, and God has promised to send his Spirit into any holy relationship. In the teaching learning situation, each one learns that giving and receiving are the same. The demarcations they have drawn between their roles, their minds, their bodies, their needs, their interests, and all the differences that they thought separated them from one another fade and grow dim and disappear. Those who would learn the same course share one interest and one goal. And thus he who was the learner becomes a teacher of God himself, for he has made the one decision that gave his teacher to him. He has seen in another person the same interests as his own.
I
That brings,
particularly, I
Go ahead.
particularly, I particularly like that it's not the teacher who is really the one who teaches, but God's teacher.
I thought that was good too, Freddie.
yeah,
I like that too.
I just wanted to make an observation. How many times have you been in a class and maybe somebody brings up a paragraph or you just remember a past lesson, whatever it is, but somebody else will say, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And it struck me that, well, I used to use this illustration. I call the course the 10,000 faceted diamond. You know, all facets are valid. All facets have the truth in them of that diamond. And so that's why it may be just a particular paragraph resonates with somebody more than another one, or a sentence or whatever. But the entirety is there, just like the entirety in God is there. And so when we join that entirety, we go to a place where we never left. It seems we did, but we never did. So anyway.
Good point, Tim.
When you
And
said that,
more-
it reminded me,
Please go ahead.
sometimes when I've gone into silence, this is one of the first things that I notice, that if I'm in a group meeting, someone will say, or someone else will say exactly the same thing that I wanted to say or I wanted to ask. The conversation just goes on without me having to say a word.
Mhm.
Yes. Something that happened in this section is that it says here that you're going backward in time. You're looking backward in time. It's very important because the reversal of the concept of time has to occur. So I can see that going backward is the right way to go. If I would look backward in time, and then I would see the healing through the miracle mindedness of what I saw previously, then I'm going to get well much faster than if I believe there's a forward arrow of time, which there is, because entropy is the forward arrow of time. However, what physicists have discovered that time and space is not fundamental. Roger Penrose and also neurologists have discovered that the mind is not in the body. And Donald Hoffman has discussed this. So there's a consciousness agent which I can follow. This let him lead the way, which I can follow, and going backward in time to see the forgetting of these transgressions, these confusions, these upsets and worries and frustrations that I made of myself to project me into the world, that it's upsetting, it's confusing, it's too difficult, it's awful, it's not run right, and so on and so forth, that I did. See, this is the damage that I did to my own self, believing that there's a forward arrow of time going to the end of time where we all die. There's no such thing as a need to fix death, because it begins to disappear from the mind, that it becomes a great worry. Now, I came to an age of, thinking about it because of my health and so on and so forth. But the fact of it is, when I start to look backward in time, I started to see all concepts of the world, all of them, every single one of them has to be reversed, because there's only one truth, and it's only one love, and it's only one God, and it's only I am He, only when I'm with Him, though. So I have to see, to go backward in time, that I see the healing of what happened in my mind that I keep on identifying with as it repeats itself, as it says here, because it will repeat itself otherwise. And I will live in that fantasy otherwise, and I will not know the truth from my ass in the hole in the ground, which is which. Dummy that in est. I can talk about,
Oh, you were in
you
this
don't know
hole
your
too,
ass
huh?
from a hole in the ground.
Yeah, I was in that for a while.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, shall we continue, or does anybody else have something they want to share about what we just read?
I don't know if anybody else, I'm sure everybody else has experienced the zone when you're running or working really hard or in communication, but being a part of being a chef for as many years as I've been, there have been so many experiences I've had that where when the group, it doesn't matter who the teacher is or who the or who is not, when everyone is working together for one goal, the time seems to stop, and we'll go through 300 people. We'll serve 300 people in the matter of 4 or 5 hours, and it will seem like 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And when we're not working well together and things are not happening well, it'll seem like 100 hours. So it's just, they're talking about teachers, and I think that when a teacher, and well, the chef is the teacher, and the crew and the line are the students, But when things go right, we're all one and we're all working as one. And then time is non-existent, or it doesn't really matter. And that's what, all the way through this section, that's what I was thinking of. That's what I wanted to say.
The great share. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, being in the zone. It's really interesting when you get into that place of timelessness.
It's a joy.
Hmm. All right, let's keep going. All right. What are the levels of teaching? The teachers of God have no set teaching level. Each teaching learning situation involves a different relationship at the beginning, although the ultimate goal is always the same: to make the relationship a holy relationship in which both can look upon the Son of God as sinless. There is no one from whom a teacher of God cannot learn, so there is no one whom he cannot teach. However, from a practical point of view, he cannot meet everyone, nor can everyone find him. Therefore, the plan includes very specific contacts to be made for each teacher of God. There are no accidents in salvation. Those who are to meet will meet, because together they have the potential for a holy relationship. They are ready for each other. The simplest level of teaching appears to be quite superficial. It consists of what seem to be very casual encounters, a chance meeting of two apparent strangers in an elevator, a child who is not looking where he is going, running into an adult by chance, two students happening to walk home together. These are not chance encounters. Each of them has the potential for becoming a teaching learning situation. Perhaps the seeming strangers in the elevator will smile to one another. Perhaps the adult will not scold the child for bumping into him. Perhaps the students will become friends. Even at the level of the most casual encounter, it is possible for two people to lose sight of separate interests, if only for a moment. That moment will be enough. Salvation has come. It is difficult to understand that levels of teaching the universal course is a concept as meaningless in reality as is time. The illusion of one permits the illusion of the other. In time, the teacher of God seems to begin to change his mind about the world with a single decision, and then learns more and more about the new direction as he teaches it. We've covered the illusion of time already, but the illusion of levels of teaching seems to be something different. Perhaps the best way to demonstrate that these levels cannot exist is simply to say that any level of the teaching learning situation is part of God's plan for at-one-ment. And his plan can have no levels, being a reflection of his will. Salvation is always ready and always there. God's teachers work at different levels, but the result is always the same. Each teaching learning situation is maximal in the sense that each person involved will learn the most that he can from the other person at that time. In this sense, and in this sense only, we can speak of levels of teaching. Using the term in this way, the second level of teaching is a more sustained relationship in which, for a time, two people enter into a fairly intense teaching learning situation and then appear to separate. As with the first level, these meetings are not accidental, nor is what appears to be the end of the relationship a real end. Again, each has learned the most he can at the time. Yet all who meet will someday meet again, for it is the destiny of all relationships to become holy. God is not mistaken in his Son. The third level of teaching occurs in relationships which, once they're formed, are lifelong. These are teaching learning situations in which each person is given a chosen learning partner who presents him with unlimited opportunities for learning. These relationships are generally few because their existence implies that those involved have reached a stage simultaneously in which the teaching-learning balance is actually perfect. This does not mean that they necessarily recognize this. In fact, they generally do not. They may even be quite hostile to each other for some time and perhaps for life. Yet, should they decide to learn it, the perfect lesson is before them and can be learned. And if they decide to learn that lesson, they become the saviors of the teachers who falter and may even seem to fail. No teacher of God can fail to find the help he needs.
I was going to say, ouch. Wow.
Yes, I've been in many of those teaching learning situations.
Mhm.
And
As Ram
obviously,
Dass used to say, there's nowhere to hold. So you got to be careful, or let's say, maybe learning to parachute out of planes would be helpful. I don't know. Never done.
Uh,
yeah, I can go back and look at every relationship that I have and see all of the lessons that I've learned. It's amazing. And continue to learn. I even see currently the lessons that I'm learning in relationships.
Yeah,
And it-
they always seem for me to be lessons and letting go what I really thought was real, but every time I try to hold on to something, and that's again, there's those words again. It's just, boy, it's a tough one. It's when we hold that we have the pain, and when we let go, we can have the help.
Yeah,
So,
true.
like so many of you have already said in different words.
Yeah. And it's about, like, even what Eric was saying before, learning to stop, right? And because when we try to fix or do or change, that's where we get into trouble, right? We just need to stop and let go and allow the Holy Spirit to enter so that we can become at one with that God mind.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
I like
But
that
again-
last line. No teacher of God can fail to find the help he needs.
Mhm.
And help in capitals there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not an accident.
That's right. That's right. So what does everybody think about the manual for teachers so far?
Well,
It's
it
easy,
says
easy
we're all
English.
teachers of God.
Easy English.
Easy English.
I remember when I first started reading this, all of a sudden everything started making sense. And I thought, oh my gosh, this I can understand this. And I was so
Right.
excited to read it because I thought, oh, this is exactly what I want to
Yeah.
learn. Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, we can go into reading the next first paragraph of the next section, which is what are the characteristics of God's teachers? But I think we'll wait to go further.
Hmm.
So so I'll read that first section and then we can discuss whatever we might want to discuss. What are the characteristics of God's teachers? The surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. They do not look alike to the body's eyes. They come from vastly different backgrounds. Their experiences of the world vary greatly, and their superficial personalities are quite distinct. Nor at the beginning stages of their functioning as teachers of God have they as yet acquired the deeper characteristics that will establish them as what they are. God gives special gifts to his teachers because they have a special role in his plan for at-one-ment. Their specialness is, of course, only temporary, set in a time as a means of leading out of time. These special gifts born in the holy relationship toward which the teaching learning situation is geared become characteristic of all teachers of God who have advanced in their own learning. In this respect, they are all alike. All differences among the sons of God are temporary. Nevertheless, in time, it can be said that the advanced teachers of God have the following characteristics. I'm going to go ahead and stop there because I don't think we're going to have time to discuss once we get into all of them. But it will be interesting. Get into trust and honesty, tolerance, gentleness, joy, defenselessness, generosity, patience, faithfulness, and open-mindedness.
Mhm, mhm. Yep, this reminded me of someone who was, I'm subbing yoga classes. I don't have my own class because I don't want to be dedicated to having to come every day. And one of the things that this particular person said to me was, I would love to be able to teach yoga because I know so much about it, but I don't think that I could get up in front of a classroom and do what you do. And I said, and what is that I'm doing? I mean, I was tickled. I mean, like, what do you mean? No, get up there. She said, I'll probably get nervous. I said, oh, okay. Now I understand where you're coming from. I said, yeah, you're going to be nervous probably at the beginning. Who knows? You will probably even make mistakes. But so what? It gets better as you go by. All of that disappears after a while.
That's right.
And she's looking at me like bewildered, right? And I said, you become so frightened that sometimes that'll paralyze you and stop you from moving forward. But you have to push through.
It's true. Good advice, Ernesto. I didn't know you were teaching yoga.
Yeah. Yes, it gets me out of the house and it gets me into something, I was doing this before the pandemic. Actually, I was doing this while I was working, and then I just kept doing it kind of full time. And then I said to myself, wait a minute, I'm retired. I don't want to be working, but I can help, by just subbing in, I can serve a purpose that way.
That's great.
And I can choose to do it or not, if I'm busy too. So, but this keeps me going there, and it keeps me, it teaches, well, as I said in the earlier thing here, that teaching is learning and learning is teaching.
Right.
I live by that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what keeps you honest. The fact that you don't know everything. You're still going to be learning. While you're teaching, you are learning.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the reward, I think, that comes with facilitating a class. I call it facilitating a class because it's not really my class, it's your class. You are the one that are coming here to do this because you want to. So I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship with the class where it's back and forth. It's not a one-way thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it really just makes it that much easier to run a class.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Good for you.
Like what you're doing here is you're learning from this.
Oh my gosh, 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Terry,
Yeah.
you're so selfish.
I am facilitating. I know. I always said that. My gosh, I'm so grateful for all of you because you keep me coming back for more.
Mm-hmm. So all those people that feel like you have a calling to do it because it's part of the process.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, whether it's teaching what you know, a cooking show, something like that, whatever it is that you're passionate about.
The thing about it, Ernesto, what you
Cookies.
said. It's
Cookies.
so true. And it's your mission to become perfect here and teach perfection over and over and over in many
Mm.
ways until you have learned it.
Yeah.
And then you are seen no more.
Yeah, because I think that the teaching of the world is not what the course would call true learning.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's a whole different ball game.
Right, right. Sure.
Because I think what we're learning in the world is to identify with the self that we made, which is not the Son of God.
Right.
Yeah.
But the teachers are
Yeah.
still teaching what they think they are, right? They're still teaching everyone what they think they are. They're still projecting that, which is, still true as to what we've just read today.
Mm.
And yet the difference between projection and extension, which is what the course wants us to
Yeah.
be, is well, it's everything, isn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, projection is usually the ego mind.
Right. Separation. An extension is seeing your brother as yourself.
Yeah, it's taken me so long to see, to become aware of, sometimes it takes a little while to remember back, okay, how did I get into this mess? Oh, I was projecting blame, guilt, whatever, onto whoever. And then I go, wait a minute, I'm the one that made the decision about them. Because I'll find out later, well, no, I actually, I was never thinking that at all. If somebody's really honest and we can have an open relationship. And it's those times when I see, wow, God, I just made all this stuff up.
Yeah.
Literally made it up and created pain in the process or unnecessary distraction. Maybe that's a general term you could use. Whatever.
Yeah.
But didn't we make everything up?
We do. We're like little kids.
Boy, I've been told that all my life. So I've begun to believe it.
Yeah. I'll never grow up.
All right, guys. Any other discussion about anything we've read today?
No, I just want you to know I love you all, and
Yeah.
however much time we've got left in these bodies, I don't know, whatever,
Doesn't
but
matter
it
because we're
doesn't
eternal.
hurt to
It'll
say
always be
those
together.
words. Doesn't
Right.
ever hurt me to say them.
Right. I agree.
So,
For being here.
Thanks
Yeah.
for being here, Freddie. Good to see you again.
yeah, it
You for
really
being
is.
here.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Thank you for joining, and we'll continue on.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.